Originally, the recruitment was managed by David. Quentin usually didn't interfere. He only mentioned that because he had admired her work previously. A few days ago, when he fired Anya, Quentin had not yet returned from England. David had planned to tell him after he returned. After all, she was just an employee, so he did not need to go out of his way to report to Quentin alone. Who knew that a change of plans was going to happen so quickly? Now that Mr. Sunderby had returned to town and Anya had also returned to the company, David really felt that he should introduce Anya to the esteemed designer. Anya was shocked by the sudden introduction, but she immediately adjusted. She smiled at Quentin and said, "Hello, Mr. Sunderby. I'm Anya Radcliffe." Anya. Quentin frowned and thought for a while. He remembered that he used to admire some fashion design work which had also been created by a designer with the name Anya. Quentin could not help but look at her. Yes, her eyebrows were perfection, and her mouth had a smooth, bright complexion. Her eyes were especially unique in shape, and they were so beautiful, one could never forget them. But Quentin's gaze fell on Anya's body. The proportions of her figure were very good, but the old-fashioned suit she was wearing pulled down her overall appearance. If she changed into some suitable clothing, it would be much better. She felt a little embarrassed when Quentin looked at her, yet she still maintained her original position and smiled at him. After Quentin examined Anya with the professional eye of a fashion designer, he said, "I really appreciate your work. Welcome to Sunderby Styles. However, as a fashion designer, the most important thing is to wear your own clothes. You will have to pay attention to that in the future." As Quentin spoke, he stretched out his slender hand towards Anya. "Yes." Anya quickly held his hand and nodded. "Sir, I will definitely pay attention to that in the future." Anya felt a little awkward now. If she had known earlier, she would have not worn this outfit. She even felt that it was far too formal for her to wear to work on the first day. Just as Anya was lost in her thoughts, the phone of a beautiful woman standing beside Quentin rang. She quickly answered the phone. As she nervously peeked at Quentin's face, she nodded, "Yes, yes, I understand." After she hung up on the phone, she turned to Quentin and said, "Sir, Jefferson said that the celebrity Annie Lee still has yet to arrive." "It's true. Celebrities need to be put on airs. It's really unbearable." "Yeah, it's so easy to get along with people on TV. They're so excessive." She clearly agreed to it. As soon as she finished speaking, Quentin did not say anything beyond a simple, "Thank you, Lily." Some of the staff members beside Quentin could not help but complain. Anya was not much for gossip. Instead, she chose to listen to what was actually being said about the matter. From the words being uttered by the staff and by her own guests, Anya could understand the implications of the sequence of events. It turned out that today was the first fashion exhibit that Quentin had held since he became the director of design at Sunderby Styles. His proudest work, Day, was the centerpiece of the show. The celebrity model Annie Lee was originally the spokesperson of the Lynch's Jewelry Company. It was said that she had a scandal with one of the executives of the Lynch Group. Recently, the Lynch Group was planning a cooperation with Sunderby Styles, so they also invited Annie Lee to be a model for Day. They knew that the time for the clothing exhibition was almost here, but Annie Lee wasn't. Now it was time for her to be in makeup and rushed backstage, but no one had seen her. Quentin heard whispers that it was because she was occupied elsewhere, but he rejected that bit of gossip without a thought. In the end, the matter was so uncomfortable. In the current situation, Quentin was faced with a really big problem. Now, how could there be a ready-made model that fit the aesthetic that Quentin was going for? Anya could not help but look at Quentin with concern. She saw that he still pursed his lips tightly, and there was a troubled look on his warm face. At the moment, Quentin seemed to have noticed Anya observing him. He immediately raised his head and stopped Anya from being able to do so. When Anya saw that he had noticed her, she hurriedly turned her eyes to the side. The expression on her face was very awkward. No way. This man was really sensitive. She had only stared at him for a few seconds. Was he judging her? Fortunately, they reached the 22nd floor quickly. Anya heaved a big sigh of relief. She and David nodded to Quentin and walked out of the elevator. Anya, wait a minute. Quentin, who had been staring at her and thinking, suddenly stopped her. She pressed his hand on the elevator and did not let the door close. What's wrong, Mr. Sunderby? Anya cursed in her heart. She had only peeked at him a few times. Could something have gone wrong? She had just officially started work, so she did not want to offend such an important person. Lily, call Annie Lee and tell her that she does not need to come. I have already found the person to headline my show. Quentin looked at Anya, and his tightly pursed lips finally held a trace of a smile. What? Not only Anya, but the people around her were stunned. They had found a new model so quickly. Mr. Sunderby was really fast. Who? Who was it? Anya looked around, wanting to see who the person chosen by Mr. Sunderby was. However, when Anya saw that everyone's eyes were focused on her, she almost gasped out loud. The person Mr. Sunderby chose, could it be her? Your name is Anya, right? Quentin smiled. Yes. Anya nodded, not knowing what to do. Can I take some of your time? Quentin asked politely. No way. Mr. Sunderby, what are you saying? I'm here to work for you. How can I earn money to raise my child when you change your mind or don't want to use my skill set? Anya silently cursed and replied, What can I do? Mr. Sunderby, feel free to tell me. All right. Don't get off here with David on the 22nd floor. Come with us to the 17th floor. Lily will show you to the fitting room. Quentin snapped his fingers and signaled Lily to the forefront. She sized Anya up and down and then said to her, Miss Radcliffe, please enter the elevator. Anya stood where she was, finding herself unable to recover from the shock. She turned her head to look at David, as if asking him what she should do. How could this be? She did not have any experience being a model at all. What if she messed up? The job she had just got seemed to have been sidelined entirely. Anya felt a sense of apprehension slithering down her spine. Why are you looking at me like that? Hurry up! David quickly waved at Anya. He felt relief fill his heart as he let out a sigh. This woman had originally had a relationship with the Godot Group, but now she was being treated differently by Mr. Sunderby. Luckily, he had not offended her. In the future, they would be able to work together well. But I still haven't even walked the stage before. Anya still did not move. She looked at David with difficulty, then looked at Quentin. Mr. Sunderby, I am worried that I will not do well. As a fashion designer, you have seen a model walk down the runway before? A fashion designer at Sunderby Styles, you shouldn't lack confidence. Quentin tilted his head slightly, looking at her expressionlessly. Anya lowered her head in embarrassment. She knew he would be disappointed with her apprehension, and she was acting cowardly. He needed people who were confident and able. Where else could she go if she did not work at Sunderby Styles? Anya was made speechless by his words and could only nod her head submissively. I know, she said. I will go right now. Anya followed Lily back to the elevator with a flustered face expression and watched helplessly as David was left alone outside the elevator. The elevator continued to move downwards. The narrow space was filled with people, but no one spoke. Other than Quentin, everyone looked at Anya with curiosity and envy. How lucky was she to be able to wear Quentin's extraordinary design and represent it in the most famous clothing exhibition hall in the country? But Anya did not think so. She shrunk down and lowered her head, not daring to look at the people around her. She did not want to be a model. She just wanted to be a professional fashion designer quietly. She did not know what kind of lucky this was today that she actually would become Quentin's temporary model. He stood beside her. He put his hands in his pocket and looked forward with piercing eyes. He reminded Anya in a low voice, "Stand still." Anya was not confident and did not demonstrate an assuring energy to the group. How could she do this? In response to his prodding, she hurriedly coughed lightly and awkwardly straightened her back. Anya looked forward and her heart was already surging. She had already said that she had never been a model before, but he was still rushing her towards the stage. She was overwhelmed with so many emotions and did not have the confidence to even stand up straight. What is this? Today was her first day at work and she was pulled in to be a model. In the future, her life at Sunderby Styles might be even more wonderful. Anya's thoughts were a mess. When she reached the 17th floor, she still stood there blankly, staring. Quentin walked out of the elevator, surrounded by a large group of people. He looked at Anya, who was still in a daze, and said, "Come out." His cold command made Anya suddenly come back to her senses. She smiled awkwardly and walked out of the elevator. Anya stepped out of the elevator, and Lily immediately walked in front of her and politely said, "Miss Radcliffe, please follow me." "Yes, ma'am." Anya nodded her head and unwillingly followed Lily to the fitting room. The others followed Quentin, walking behind him. Anya stood nervously at the door of the fitting room, waiting for Lily to bring Day over. Her palms started to sweat and she was very nervous. Was she really going to wear Quentin's work and show off? Could she really do it? "Miss Radcliffe, Day is here. Please change." Lily's call dragged Anya out of her messy thoughts. She smiled at Lily in embarrassment and then looked at the masterpiece in Lily's hand. Of course, the moment Anya saw the artistry, she was stunned by it. It also made her forget about her awkward situation. Anya's eyes stared at the garment in Lily's hands. She felt that it was simply the perfect example of a combination of styles. Day was meant to evoke imagery of fairies, sky, and mysticism. Now Anya understood. The collection had a breathtaking beauty, much like a fairy. The dress just so happened to reveal the model's exquisite collarbone. At the same time, the dress used the inspiration of blue and white porcelain, a perfect combination of pure white and light blue. The overall creation was designed to show the graceful figure of the model. It was ethereal. Not only that, but the dress had delicate and exquisite embroidery. It seemed both organic and indulgent in a way that made people stop and admire it. "Quickly go and change your clothes. I only have 1.5 minutes left." Quentin walked to Anya's side. She was stunned. His voice was soft and unquestioning. Anya pointed at the garment and then looked at Quentin and pointed at herself. She asked, "Do you really want me to wear it?" "Do you know of any other option?" He fired back. He raised his eyebrows elegantly. Oh, Anya was a little stunned. She had been very reluctant, but now Anya felt that she could rightfully wear it. It was like a dream. Anya carefully picked up the dress and walked into the changing room. Anya had just walked into the changing room when Lily received a call. Lily anxiously said, "Got it," and hung up. What happened now? Quentin looked at the door of the changing room and asked without turning his head. Mr. Sunderby, Annie Lee's manager just called now and said that Annie Lee will be here soon. Look, Anya still found herself awestruck as she looked at the dress. Just as she was preparing to change into it, Lily's words reached her ears through the door of the fitting room. When Anya heard Lily say so, she immediately stopped the process. After all, Annie Lee was a big shot in the celebrity and model world. Sunderby Styles had also invested a lot of manpower and resources to get her to agree to participate in tonight's exhibition. Now that Annie Lee was about to arrive, Quentin would probably use her to showcase his work instead. Anya let out a big sigh of relief. She looked at the exquisite and unique dress in her hands and suddenly had a little pang of regret in her heart. Beautiful dress. In the end, it seems I am not fated to have this adventure with you. However, I will work hard to learn. One day, I will also design a seminal work such as yourself. Anya happily raised the corner of her mouth. She carefully hugged Aday and stood in the changing room, waiting for Quentin to let her out. Lily was also anxiously waiting for his decision. Annie Lee really did not play. Now that she had heard that Quentin Sunderby himself was overseeing the preparations, she immediately became anxious again. So she shouted for them to let her in. Lily felt that Annie Lee was a little too much. However, it was not appropriate to let a newly appointed employee, who was not a professional model, wear a dress like this one. Lily felt the same as the other employees. She hoped that Annie Lee would be the one to model this dress for the event. I already told her that she doesn't need to come. Quentin did not look at Lily, but knocked on the door of the changing room with his hand. Anya, hurry up. We're running out of time. If it were not for the sake of building relationships with the Lynch Group and the fact that the company wanted to play the celebrity card to increase publicity, Quentin would have not let Annie Lee wear his creation at all. Now that Annie Lee had been the first to deviate from the agreement, he had found a suitable candidate. He could openly reject her. He was not one to conform.